I doing here? I'll try and answer some of these questions about 60 minutes or less. So, my name's Simon, I come from Long Eaton, which is literally just down the road, and I've made video games for 40 years, and now I'm fortunately semi-retired. And this is my story so far. So, back in 1975, this is me, age 9. I've always wanted to make cartoons and survive wallpaper like that. I grew up in a world that was full of Hanna-Barbera. I loved Tom and Jerry and all the cartoon antics. I remember distinctly being 8 years old and watching a TV show called Bob Godfrey's Do-It-Yourself Film Animation Show, in which they showed you how you could make your own cartoons using little cardboard cutouts and everything like that. And I can distinctly remember seeing Terry Gilliam here doing the Python cartoons and explaining how you could do them yourself. And I was like, wow, this is brilliant, I want to make cartoons. And then there's a comic book that I was reading at the time for 5p every week, Whoopee comic, that had these incredible illustrations by a guy called Ken Reed that had all these crazy monsters. So I spent a lot of time actually drawing all that sort of stuff. And, thanks to the wonder of the internet and the tethering, we are loading. I think we're going to have to make this, yeah. On Christmas Eve in 1977, I bought this. So yeah, I was about 11 years old, and Star Wars came out, and for 95p I bought this collector's edition. And one of the things that just blew my mind was all of a sudden opening the pages. Yeah, there was the cool robots and stuff, but there was concept art and guys making models and bringing kind of stories to life, and I was like, wow, this is really, really something. So for the next few years, I became obsessed with Star Wars. And loading. Yeah, we're going to have to get this in order.
You need an Amiga.
Yeah, I need something or other. I think a Linux laptop is going to be my thingy. But yes, so yeah, I became absolutely obsessed. So yeah, I drew pictures, made spaceships out of model kits and everything. And I desperately wanted an 8mm camera, but my parents wouldn't get me one. It was kind of too expensive, and it was a bit obscure and stuff like that sort of thing. But yeah, that's me. So 1981, I'm round at a friend's house, and he's got a Sinclair ZX81, black and white. That was Space Invaders, and I was like, this is amazing. I've got pictures on screen. I was like, Phil, could I actually change what these Space Invaders look like? And he was like, yeah, you could make those asterisks look like a letter A. I was like, yeah, but one day you can draw them. So I was like, screens, cartoons, I want to get them on. So I saved up with my paper round, and in 1982, age 16, I bought myself a BBC Model A computer and started to teach myself how to program. I got a Saturday job at a company called First Bite Computers in Derby, which is under where Marks and Spencer's is now, and basically had a Saturday job selling these things, and look, this massive microbitic monitor back home for Christmas, because I've been running it on a black and white TV for like 7 months after my birthday and everything, and yeah, obligatory bottle of Baby Sham and the Christmas notes. And whilst I was there, I met a bunch of guys, Terry Lloyd, Rob Toon, Chris Shrigley and Andy Green, whose significance will become evident later in the story. So 82 to 83, I just taught myself how to code BASIC, because back then you used to have all the listings in the magazine, so I kind of copied the sort of stuff that I saw in the arcades and made myself these simple sort of little games. And I pretty much cottoned on to the fact that not only could you write these things and lists, but you could send them into magazines. So I sent in little versions of Pac-Man and stuff that I'd written. I drew illustrations that went on the cover, and once I kind of figured out that they'd pay you £50 a page, I was like, okay, I'll write a story. I'll write some stuff about how I actually made the thing, and yeah, I sort of made a few little things out of what I was doing at home just to teach myself. So then in 84, every computer shop at the time was also publishing their own software, and First Bite Computers turned around and said, we want to do a few little runs of tapes. So I made a little basic game called Star Force Lander for First Bite, drew them the box art and the flyers, and I think 2 copies of that sold in the shops. And then in 84, as I'm working away at home, just exploring and stuff, my friend Stu Gray was coming around of an evening and said, oh, hang on a minute, this game that you're working on was a little jetpack guy flying from one side of the screen to the other and delivering. You know, send that in to somebody, I'm sure they'd publish it, I might get it out. He went, you know, do it. So motivated, I put it on a tape, sent off a couple of copies, one to ANF Software, who rejected it because it wasn't 100% machine code, and Micropower came back and said, here's a list of 10 things we want you to do. If you can change those, we'll publish it. So there I was, aged 18, I got a game in the charts for the BBC, and I was like, hey, it's fantastic. I bought my first second-hand car using the money, which was amazing, and say thanks to Stu for nudging me in the direction, otherwise I'd never done it. So then from 85 to 87, well, I blew my A-levels because I was all interested in computer games and girls. I wasn't interested in the maths, physics and chemistry that I'd taken up. Didn't do art anyway. And my backstop was Trent Polytechnic in here. So actually the Newton building that's just over there, I spent kind of 2 years in a sandwich year learning all about computers, doing a HND. And in the middle of that, I went and worked in IBM UK's marketing department, which is just at the bottom of Tollhouse Hill there. They didn't have any computer programming jobs, they had one in marketing, so I spent a whole year with this bunch, kind of arranging sandwiches, building PCs, writing newsletters, and making sure that the salesman had all this stuff. But at the time, working for IBM was like working for Google or Facebook now, and it was like too big an opportunity to pass up. So I ended up my sandwich year, thought, well, I'm never going to work for a big American company, that's not for me. And during that time, met my lovely wife Jane, who at that point was my girlfriend, and had to put up with me for all of this time. And anyway, yeah, I did all of this stuff, finished my course, and then left going, right, I like making games and stuff, I've done the serious computing, what am I going to do? And I ended up working for a little company in Long Eaton, my hometown, called Lasermaker, where I was writing BCPL for a desktop publishing software. It was as boring as it sounds. But then one night, I got a call from my mate Terry Lloyd. That's not a picture of Terry. Terry phoned me up and said, I've now got a job working for Gremlin Graphics as an artist, and we need some help drawing tiny Dolph Lundgrens for their Masters of the Universe computer game. Do you want to come and join us? I was like, what? Stay in a cube farm and kind of take on this, or do I jump in the game grid and see what happens? So had a word with Jane, and the word was, well, let's give it a go. And it's a go that we then had for probably the next 30 odd years. So from 87 to 88, I worked for Gremlin Graphics and became a full-time graphic artist, working out a little tiny office in Saxon House in Derby with 8 other guys. The guys from the store that I'd met at First Bite who'd been on to getting a job at Gremlin because they'd made Bounder for the Commodore 64 and some other games. And so, yeah, I worked on Masters of the Universe doing little tiny Dolph Lundgrens, some of the stuff for Skate Crazy for the C64, doing a load of cockpit stuff for Night Raid on Spectrum, and with my feet in the door and access to program, I was just like, right, I want to teach myself 68,000, I want to get back into coding, what do I need to do? And Andy Green, who was our resident sort of Atari ST program at the time, went, here's about 12 lines of code, if you put these in, then the Atari becomes this massive box of memory, you can just do whatever you like. So I was like, I'm in. So I spent my time here. So 1988, after about 7 or 8 months, Gremlin hit a cash flow crisis, and yeah, we had to say goodbye to Gremlin. We were in a situation where they said, well, look, you can either come join us at Sheffield, which would be like an hour and a quarter commute there and back every day, back in the 80s, or we'll give you redundancy. And we went, okay, we'll take redundancy. So there's me with the Duran Duran hair, Rob Toon, Chris Shrigley, Terry Lloyd, Andy Green, on the day that Gremlin we said goodbye to. And the day that we said goodbye to Gremlin, one of Gremlin's founders, Kev Norman, and their sales manager, Jeremy Smith, came down and went, hey guys, would you like to work for us? If we set up a company here, would you like to carry on doing what you want for us? We were like, yeah, okay. So Core Design was born. In the meantime, I had taught myself how to code, and so my first game was writing the code for the Amiga and ST, Rick Dangerous. The art and the design, I did all the sprite graphics, and between myself and Terry and Bob and Rob, we all did the design and stuff. But this was kind of like a situation of we needed something to pitch for one of Core's very first games, and the idea was nobody's done a really good Indiana Jones game that was in the spirit of the Temple Run at the very start of Raiders, so let's kind of do something. And we came up with this goofy little idea about a little guy that runs around and avoids traps and everything like that kind of thing. And I am shocked and amazed that people even remember this game, let alone what they have done over the years. If you're here tomorrow, I've actually got some of the original design documents that I can show you what we actually did to, because I've got a little exhibit coming tomorrow because we're here all day. So yeah, did that. And from then also in my spare time, over 18 months, I wrote Switchblade for myself. It was basically the whole game was me and Ben Devilish doing the music. And basically this was my training ground for learning how to code games. I was kind of writing Switchblade in the background, and so that took me 18 months. And weirdly, I was in the situation that Core was accelerating through the games in my full time, and then every spare minute I'm working on this thing. Such that there was a certain point where my code had progressed so well during the course of my work day that my beginner's code that this thing was absolute junk. And I was kind of faced with about 5 months towards the end going, do I rewrite this all from scratch? Because I could do, and it's like, no, just get the thing out. So I kind of ground it out for the next 5 months to get the thing completed. The thing about this one was I actually offered it to Core to publish, and at the time they didn't have the cash, so we actually cut a deal with Gremlin for those guys to publish the game for me. Then, absolute gaming masterpiece, St. Greaves' football trivial quiz game. We got 10 weeks to make this, which was a kind of Trivial Pursuit kind of game that was based around football. And if you remember the TV show back in the 80s, yes, these two football pundits saying stuff at one another. Anyway, we had 2,000 questions we had to fit it into a Sinclair Spectrum, and I ended up doing all of the artwork for it, coding for the two 68,000 formats, and within 10 weeks, I think 4 or 5 of us actually got this thing knocked out. The most notable thing I can remember was the night before my wedding, Jane standing by the desk going, right, this better be the master disc, because otherwise we're calling tomorrow off, kind of thing, as we're hurtling towards 6:30, and I'm like, yeah, get that thing out. Then the following day, as a present on our wedding night, I ended up with a boxed copy of the board game given to me by my co-workers. Then 1990, Core Design, we were in a situation where Jeremy came to me and said, right, do you want to do Judge Dredd or Monty Python for Virgin? I was like, Judge Dredd, because I was, let's say, Star Wars 2000 AG, Judge Dredd, yes, I could do it, and this, that, and the other. Went, they've come back, they want us to do Monty Python. I was like, great. So this was the game that slipped, probably. It took us about 9 months to actually get the thing out, because nailing down what a Monty Python game is was a nightmare. Everything that Virgin was suggesting was to do lots and lots and lots and lots of mini games that would be really expensive to develop, and we'd have to cram them into a tiny Sinclair Spectrum. It wasn't going to happen. So what we did propose was a kind of platform game where Gumby, who was the main character that all of the Pythons had played in live action, has his head ripped off, stuck on the body of a fish, a bird, a spring, and human, and you go through, and all of the sprites and everything are drawn in the style of the Terry Gilliam stuff, which had inspired me back when I was little. It was a horrible game to work on, because everything kept changing all the way through, what everybody was asking for and what their expectations of Monty Python was. Could you do a cheese shop sketch where you just go through the motions? It was, it's quite special. The final kind of push on this game was me taking the whole game home for 4 solid weeks, doing the art, the design, all the animation and everything, bringing it into the team on a Monday, going, there you go, and then disappearing for 7 days and just keeping going around the cycle until we finished. We got it out in the way. Hats off to the team for their patience on this one, because it was quite torturous, but I'm pleased with the look and how many genuine Python references we got in there, because one of the things I actually had to do was to become the biggest fan. The moment we actually found out we were doing it, I basically took every single Python VHS tape, every single book, and then for a whole weekend just mainlined a lot, made notes so that I could skip to any part of the tape and get the reference I needed, sort of thing, and then kept a running list of how many Python jokes we packed in there. We packed in a load. So then Rick Dangerous 2 came along. By that point, Microprose had bought the Firebird games, and so they wanted a sequel. So basically we just sort of wheeled Rick out. Rather than rehashing and doing an Indiana Jones thing, we decided to do Flash Gordon. And so a more sophisticated trap system, and just had a whole heap of fun doing it. One of the delights as well was actually seeing that when they published it, they came back with the same art style for the cover, although the original one, being this realistic style, was completely different from the goofy little guy that we drew in the games. We blasted that one out. It went out there. The other question is, did you ever do Rick Dangerous 3? If not, why not? Literally nobody asked us. It was one of those kind of things we just did work for hire, and so we all moved on to other things. So yeah, I had always kind of thought maybe the next one would be some kind of detective thing, but that's probably about as far as we got with thinking about that one, because we're on to other stuff. 1991, Thunderhawk turns up. So we had two amazing programmers, Mark Avery and Sean Dunlevy, who turned up with a 3D engine that for its time on the Amiga was just mind-blowing, that it was so fast and so efficient. And they'd written a helicopter simulation game, and I was brought on board to kind of help with the design and stuff. And one of the things, if you remember any of those early simulation games, it was there's a dot on the horizon, fly for 45 minutes to the dot, fire another dot to that dot, and then fly 45 minutes back under those keys. The stuff that these guys had got on the screen was so impressive for its time. It was like, how do we get you to the 3D as fast as possible? So one of the things my involvement was with the mission design was making sure that we just put you on the edge of the area where you got access to all of this cool 3D, launched you into the firefight, and then did all the mission stuff like that kind of thing. So hats off to those guys for incredible work with the 3D engine. My bit was drawing the HUD, doing the mission design and stuff for there. My first brush with 3D. Then 92 to 93, I got to get out of the way of doing little tiny goofy cartoon platform games. I've been fascinated with anime and stuff as a kid as well, and so Wolfchild came about, which came out on the Amiga and the Atari initially. Nice big sprites, inspired by kind of Capcom, Bitmap Brothers style kind of rendering on this sort of stuff, loads and loads of playfields. The only thing was with this game was the fact that I had to drop coding, because by this point the games had gotten so big it was like, well, you can't do the programming, the design and the artwork all at the same time. You're going to have to drop something. So I was like, well, look, you've got better programmers than me, so I'll step back from the programming. I ended up writing the utilities. Worked with my school friend John Kirkland on this for probably about a year or something like that kind of thing, and had a whole heap of fun delivering this kind of werewolf, altered beast inspired scrolling platformer. We popped that one out, and then all of a sudden the conversion started coming in. Can you do it for the Sega Mega CD? Can you do it for Sega Genesis? Even squeezing it into the Master System and Game Gear. Come on inside. Which was, oh, bless you, that's cool, thank you. Okay, I'll be here tomorrow, literally. So squeezing it into Game Gear with Sean Dunlevy. But yeah, it was kind of, it was one of those kind of things that the project started really well, and then it just kept on going, and I discovered the art of having to push more detail into graphics, which is never fun. When they turned around and told me how many colours the SNES had to play with, my head nearly exploded. And also many different variations of the level design for the various different sort of Mega CD formats and everything like that. So 1993, core design, Asterix and the Power of the Gods came along. Rich Morton and Stephen Walker were put on this one. Core had already done an Asterix game already, and Sega came back with another one, but they said, well, you know, we want it to go further. I'd been a massive fan of Asterix. Actually, there is a slide telling you that earlier on, but I think the loading skipped over it. So I was kind of brought on board to do the design stuff, so I got a massive stack of Asterix books, and it was terrible. I had to read them all, and what I needed to do was to form a quest, because one of the things about all the Asterix books, if you ever read them, they always start with a giant map of Europe, and Asterix and Obelix go on various different adventures, and one of the things is that they have a magic potion. And so what I went through was this kind of through some 40 Asterix books and found every single page where there was a reference to the magic potion ingredient, and made a big list of this book, this page, this panel has got this. So when I submitted to Sega and ultimately Les Editions Albert René, which is Goscinny and Uzo's publisher, I said, and there are these 16 or 20 magic potion ingredients. They're in your books, check them. And we use those as a kind of quest line. So the great thing was I knew that we were building quite an authentic Asterix adventure. I also, on this one as well, built in a load of redundant threads, because I also learned on this time is however much your ambition is for what goes in the game, somebody's going to come to you and say, we're going to have to cut it in half. So I actually built 3 versions of the game in a secret part of the design doc. This is the one we pitched. this is half of it, and this is about a third of it with all the pieces, and we just prioritised which way we built it, so we knew that we was never having to cut anything we didn't, or build anything that we'd ended up cutting. So anyway, yeah, that went out, and then at an Asterix Expo it was announced, and we got a wonderful fax back from Les Editions Albert René saying, thank you very much for doing this, this is the most authentic Asterix game that we've ever seen, we really appreciate it, it was fantastic. Because as you say, it's one of those kind of things that, you know, there's bringing yourself to it, but then delivering what the fans and the authors intended into this kind of format is really, really important to me anyway. So yeah, 94, core design, bobber and sticks. This was a joke that backfired. I'd made the Rip Dangerous game, and over the years, Jeremy, who's the boss, kept on kind of going, you should make a game with an adventure and all this kind of stuff. And there's a certain point in and around about 93, 94, when Flashback and another bunch of games came out where they were videoing a programmer running up and down a car park, over tracing him and getting rotoscoped graphics. And so Jeremy said, oh, we should do a rotoscope game with an adventurer. He's got a hat, he's got a stick, and he goes through these things. I'm thinking, I'm going to be the one that's running up and down the car park and then tracing bad versions of me off of VHS. I don't want to do that. And also I was kind of thinking, well, it's okay saying a stick, but has he got a pole vault stick? Has he got a stick like this? If he throws the stick, does the stick come back? Does he have to go running? It's like, no. So anyway, at that point, I was working with a lovely guy called Billy Allison, who was an animator who'd come from British TV, children's TV and stuff like this kind of thing. Had a really wild imagination, full of goofy, crazy sort of creatures and stuff. And so after being asked about making this man with a stick game, we sat down one Tuesday night at my house with a big piece of paper, and we just lampooned the whole thing and just did loads and loads of cartoons of all these ridiculous things that you could do with a stick in a cartoon fashion to highlight the ludicrousness of the whole thing, because of course the stick had to be different lengths and it could come, you know. So anyway, we presented it to Jeremy, went, this is not going to work. Look, you see, all of these things, if we do a rotoscoped character, you can't, you know, you're eliminating all these things. Well, do that then. So we committed ourselves to making this crazy little puzzle platform game. Billy was responsible for all the sprites, I did all the backgrounds and the utility stuff. And basically for a whole year, it was 4 of us in a room, 2 coders, myself and Billy, sending ourselves completely loopy, doing this goofy little thing where you have a little guy with an alien that resembles a stick that you can do all sorts of things, from snorkeling to poking him in holes, throwing him, he'll come back like a boomerang, you name it. We did everything with it. Probably about 3 people saw it, and we had a hell of a time, and ate lots and lots of shortcake biscuits till 11 o'clock at night, laughing our heads off. 94 to 95, I worked on Dragonstone, which was an RPG. The original artist actually left for the States, and pre-internet days, that was half death for a project, so I ended up taking on all the artwork and stuff. And Shell Shock, where I've been given a Silicon Graphics workstation, because in the wake of Donkey Kong, everybody bought Silicon Graphics workstations and went, yes, now use them to make games. And I was like, I haven't got a programmer. I've got this big box that renders 3D. I don't know what to do. We had the BC Racers engine, which was one of those kind of sprite scaling engines at that time. And I was like, I can make a tank game, come up with a series of cool characters. And so we built this game with a front end that was all sort of rendered characters kind of thing, and all black and Hispanic cast for 1995. Yeah, wrote a script, had that sent over to Hollywood. They some script writers rewrote it for us, so it was authentic, and had it all recorded in the States, and that went out and came out on the PlayStation. But one of the things about Core during this sort of time was, by kind of 94, 95, a lot of the, I was the last of the original guys that were there, and in fact, a lot of the founders of the company had also left, and so the tone actually really changed at Core, and it was kind of getting a bit dark and a bit grim, and yeah, not a nice place to be. It was one of those kind of things. It was what we'd now call a toxic workplace. It was very unpleasant. People were sniping against one another. Couldn't work enough. I was working 7 days a week. I was putting a load of strain on myself and Jane. And some of the guys actually were talking about leaving. And at that point, myself and Guy Miller, who the creative director of the thing, were like, crikey, well, we better start looking out for ourselves and stuff. And one of the things that we did was like, let's just put the feelers out and see whether it's feasible for us to set up on our own if some of the guys would come with us, because they're all disenchanted with it, they all hate it here. So we did that, thought, oh, no, this isn't going to work out, and so we canned that idea, started writing our CVs, and one day I got called into Jeremy's office. I've heard you've taken my boys. I'm like, okay. And so I had two choices. Rat out and blame the other guy, or tell him what I thought. Well, told him what I thought. The doors got locked, I got escorted out of the building. It was the best day of my life. After kind of 7 years, and then basically 24/7, and actually at one time being so low that I'm thinking, if I drive off the road now, everything will stop. All of a sudden, all of that was lifted. And it's from throwing up in the car park, from having stress and anxiety, all of that went away. And what I ended up doing was finding a completely new home. Before I go from core design, a little anecdote. What about Tomb Raider? I always ask, do I get involved in that? Very, very tiny little piece. At that point, I was kind of like lead designer for the whole place. All credit goes to Toby Gard. He's the guy behind Tomb Raider. This is in the very, very early stages. Toby had drawn up this wonderful piece of Laura Cruz at the time. She was a bit pith helmet and pigtails, a bit 1950s, spiders kind of thing, and myself and Guy and Jeremy and Jeremy, what do you think about that? And I was like, well, I think it's great. I think it's really good that we're going for a female character, because at that time everybody was a white guy with black hair and a buzz cut. This will differentiate it and make it more interesting, but I don't think she looked like she raised tombs. Toby, have you heard of Tank Girl? So I brought in my Hewlett and Martin books, dropped those on his desk. He then took Belle from Beauty and the Beast with a little strand of hair, because that had just come out that summer, and Laura came along, kind of thing. But that's my tiny, tiny little nudge in getting Laura to Lara and where she came along. But yeah, so anyway, I got a job at Acclaim Studios Teesside, or Iguana Entertainment, and during the course I met these two lovely chaps as well at some point in the 90s. Darren and Jason Falkus, who set up the thing, gave us jobs up at Stockton-on-Tees, which is 130 miles that way. Jane comes from Middlesbrough, and she went, I'm going to go up there. I'm like, no, that's fine. You stay with my parents, your parents. I will go away. And so what started was an odyssey of me travelling around the country and working away during the week, staying in a hotel or a flat, and then coming home at weekends. And it was the first time in 7 years of us being married that I was actually home at the weekends. And over the course of time, we decided we were having kids and stuff like that. So I could basically spend 5 days a week, 24 hours a day, working solid, and then have an actual weekend. Because once I hit the A19 and was heading south, nobody was touching me. So I came on board when they were working on College Slam, which was the third iteration of the NBA Jam things. They had a load of teams all going off in different directions, as Nick, my lead artist, said. It's like we've all set off for America and our boats are going in different directions. Some of us are going to be in Mexico, some of us are going to be in Alaska. Help. And they'd also said, well, are you an artist or designer? I was like, look, you've got better artists than me. I've got design skills. I'll come in and do that. So I became a designer and project manager at that time. And the first part of this was going around this lovely, huge College Slam team, basically going, right, what do you think the game is? Write it down. What do you think the game is? And compiling a design document that got everybody back on track, and we shipped on time. So I was quite pleased with that one. Because myself and Guy, who'd come with me from Core, had been pitching original software, we were kind of like, you guys are doing lots of conversions, but you're capable of much more. So we put together a load of original pitches, because they had a great team up there, and we wanted to make the most of it. Those who pitched in New York, the guys in New York went, we don't really want anything original, but we've got these comic books. We've already done a game based on Turok the Dinosaur Hunter, which we have the comic book of. Here's some comic books, what do you think? And one of the ones we picked was Shadowman, which is this cool guy who could travel between the world of the living and the world of the dead. And so for a good sort of 3 years, we embarked on this kind of journey to make what was termed by some of the magazines Zelda's evil twin. Had a really amazing time up there in the north. Real family atmosphere, everybody totally lovely. Most meetings were held down the pub. It was fantastic. And whilst I was there as well, I met a guy called Alex Ward, who will feature in this later on. He was a Claims INR guy at the time. But yeah, we put out Shadowman. We started on one format. It evolved to multiple formats. Came on the N64. Very bad version on the PS1 because we were heartbroken. We had to release it too early. And Les, who was our lead programmer, was like, please give me a few more weeks just to optimize it. But we had to meet the quarter. So it's probably the second game that I get most mail about still to this day. We also then went and did the sequel to it, Shadow Man Second Coming. This we kind of set up the design for and everything. Fantastic time. But at that point, Darren and Jason, who were the founders of the studio, had stepped away to set up their own sort of thing. And as is a thing, once the people that are running the place that you kind of came in to go, the vibe changes. And I say, it was fine up at the Acclaim Studio T side, but we could see the writing was on the wall. Acclaim was slowly shutting down studio, so it was time to look and go. So I went and got myself a job at an Infogram in Manchester, and worked 10 weeks on a Superman game that didn't happen. The interview was basically, we want a new Superman game for the Xbox. Here's the Xbox controller, which was this massive kind of American thing for giant American hands. And I put together a pitch. I met with the editors and writers of the DC Comics at the time. It was fantastic. Learned the difference between animated Superman and comic Superman, which is in animated Superman, he can kill because TV writers don't care about your continuity. So yeah, put together this pitch for this Superman game. And as we were sort of talking about what Infogram were doing, I was kind of vaguely aware of it, but it was like, hang on a minute, in your Sheffield studio, which was in the old Gremlin offices, they're also making a Superman the Animated Series game. I was like, can I go over and look at it? So I met the lovely producer there, Rob, and started looking at his stuff, and he was solving all the problems that I was doing, and like, you're underway with the game. So I went back to my boss, Tim, and went, Tim, why are we making 2 Superman games? Because you're still going to have an S on the box. I'm going to put together a team to make something that's virtually identical to that one over there, except he can kill in here, but mine's on the comics, but, you know, at the end of the day, it'd be cheap if you do conversion. So we went down to London, met their marketing team, and I said, why are you doing 2 Supermen? He went, we were wondering that too. So we canned the project there and then. On the train back, I've got Tim profusely going, I'm ever so sorry. You could work on the Warner Brothers games. We've got Looney Tunes and everything like that. I'm like, yeah, I've just been offered to work as lead designer on Harry Potter. I was like, what, for Electronic Arts? They're really good. I interviewed with them. They're very, very nice. I was like, yes, they are. So I then, instead of going from Teesside to Manchester, now I was going around the M25 to even further away and staying away and stuff. And there I worked on 4.5 Harry Potters. It was one of those kind of ones with the background that I'd had in doing kind of licensed project or whatever. The first stuff we came into was the Philosopher's Stone stuff, which was underway with some outside teams, and they were going, well, Harry Potter's magic, you can get away with doing anything, can't you? So I spent probably the first part of the first 12 months reining them in, going, no, this is like giving, I don't know, Luke Skywalker a spatula or something or other like that. You can't do it. It's got to be these sort of things. But at that point, nobody had seen a Harry Potter game, a Harry Potter book, and so it was kind of becoming the fiction police for this stuff, which of course all had to be passed through Joe Rowling before it would go through. So yeah, worked on as lead designer on Harry Potter all the way through to halfway through Order of the Phoenix, on the Chamber of the Secrets, which is the first one that we properly developed with down in Chertsey. It was a co-production with Eurocom in Derby, Hubins and his lovely team, so I actually spent some of the time down south in the M25 and some of the time actually sleeping in my own bed at home and working with the guys in Derby. And so after about 6 years of going through the progression, and actually you'll see as well, we got closer and closer with Warner Brothers, so the likenesses of the characters came through, and we got access to the sets, which was really, really cool. I then got a phone call from my mate Alex Ward, who I'd met back at Acclaim. He was now working for Criterion. He went, do you want to carry on playing with wands and guns? Do you want to, wands, or do you want to play with guns and explosions and cars? I was like, oh, Alex, I'll do this. Because he was now the creative head at Criterion Studios as part of Electronic Arts. So I did an internal transfer and joined the Burnout team. So there I had another sort of 3 years joining the Burnout Paradise team. I actually came on board to work on the sequel to their first-person shooter, Black. But basically the Burnout Paradise team was getting bigger, and day by day, programmers and artists were just vanishing from our team until I think it was me and Jez Chubb looking at one another going, it's you and me, post-it notes and everything, we better jump. So ended up jumping on to help out with the Burnout Paradise stuff, and I ended up doing all sorts of bits and pieces, from building websites to presenting the video podcast to building the live front end for them, and also doing a load of pitches and things of games that never got made but were tremendously rewarding to work on and everything. So come sort of end of 2008, I thought, right, okay, I've been literally living away from home for best part about 13 years. It's time for me to come home, and I'm going to make 2009 my time to try and get home, sleep on my own bed, and actually, see my family and see Jane. So I just made a little nod to my friend Hugh at Eurocom, and he actually basically went, yeah, do you want to come on board? You can start in January of 2009. Can't tell you what it is you're going to be working on, but it's really cool. I was like, okay, well, as long as I'm working on some little Disney game, it could be a mobile game, I don't mind. I've done so much cool stuff. I'll be happy to just work on some little tiny happy conversions as long as I sleep in my own bed. So, yeah. Would you like to remake GoldenEye? It was like kind of the video game equivalent of, by the way, we want Citizen Kane, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings all done better in a new box for modern audiences. I was like, okay. So yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. So yeah, Activision wanted GoldenEye 007 for the Wii. Except they didn't want a remake of the rare classic, they wanted it with Daniel Craig as Bond. And Eon, the production company, didn't want the same story as GoldenEye or the same background that Pierce Brosnan was in the movie. And some other bits and pieces too. So anyway, I put together a pitch, and we had this idea of, because Daniel Craig's Bond's really, really physical and stuff, we'll shoot it all in first person, do lots and lots of motion capture. So when he grabs hold of somebody and snaps their neck with his takedown moves, he's really intelligent, he's really stealthy, and Activision were like, yes, this is great. Eon Productions were fantastic, let's do it. There was still a little bit about kind of how the story was going to go together, but eventually we sort of worked out that. And so, yeah, working for Eurocom for the first year, we're kind of building this thing up. Then Modern Warfare 2 hit, and all of a sudden action, guns, explosions were in, and all of a sudden all the stealth work that we'd done in the game was being thrown out the window for there has to be more explosions, more exploding helicopters per second than anything you could possibly imagine. So from January of 2010, we were in complete 24/7 mode, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I saw everybody less than I had done in the preceding 13 years as we were just grinding our way through this thing. We worked with the production company. They brought in a Hollywood production designer to come up with new takes on all of the classic locations. They brought in a script writer, thankfully the producer to have arguments with in rewriting the story, but we kind of screamed this thing under the radar at the end of September of that year, and during that time I'd had the easiest interview ever. When do you want to come back, Simon? So I ended up going back down to Criterion straight after we did, and then resumed actually seeing my family again. The funny thing was that Alex had got in touch with me from Criterion and just literally asked me, and I said, well look, if you can move the office 40 or 50 miles north, I can probably do it. So, well, I'm sure you can work from home, we can work something out. So from 2010 to 2013, I was back working for Criterion on the Need for Speed Most Wanted multiplayer from 2012, basically working from home 3 days a week and popping down to see them for 2 days, staying over and out, which was a luxury in comparison to the previous 18 months at Eurocom. We had a very small team of really elite guys, and we were doing the multiplayer as part of it, and I dipped my toe back into the water of graphics, which I hadn't done for probably 15 years, because we needed an awful lot of rewards and things in the form of all these license plates and unlockable. So I took that one on because it was like, well, I can't spare anybody else to do it. So I was into the Photoshop and everything, and we got the game out, and that's how that one went. Then from 2013, just lots and lots of pitches for games that didn't land, nothing one thing. And the studio heads, Alex and Fiona, who'd set up Criterion, they left, and as I've said, once the people that set the tone and all that lot leave, things start to change. So it was kind of a time of uncertainty for EA Criterion at that time. So I thought it was time to go, so I'm going to take some time off. So I went home. I basically retrained myself as an artist. I also dabbled with coding. I pulled up Unity, got back into actual high-level programming, because the last program I had done was 68,000, was like learning C#, and went back to becoming an artist again. And then after about 6-7 months, Alex and Fiona announced 3 Fields Outdoor Entertainment, and for the next 10 years I would work from home with 7 of us friends, making games on a very small budget using Unreal. The whole idea was we make games really, really quickly on a small budget using all the tools we possibly could do. So the first game took us probably about 2 years, 18 months, Dangerous Golf, which was a physics showcase, the idea being that you take a ball, you place it in an environment full of explosive or smashable objects, so like a giant dining hall with loads and loads of glass. You pitch the ultimate trick shot, and the idea is to hit as many things as possible on the way before you sink the pool. You can even set the ball on fire. So I ended up doing kind of the cover art, ended up doing a load of the heads-up stuff and everything. This was a way for us to learn how to get into Unreal and use the code now. So I'm going to... A second, I've lost focus here. No, not read aloud. Yep. Then 2016 we dabbled with PlayStation VR and a very, very short project called Lethal VR, did the cover art, loads of the HUD stuff. Learned why in the real world doing those kind of floating Marvel displays that Tony Stark did would be a nightmare, because it's like trying to focus on a shop window. So anyway, did the HUD for that one. We then moved into a game called Danger Zone. I did a very, very complicated HUD setup which took data from the game and presented it in various different Iron Man style graphics and everything. This was taking physics on, where we would smash cars into a crash test facility, and the idea was that you created as much destruction as possible and got scored for it. The next year we then took it out onto the road on Danger Zone 2, where we actually modelled junctions from the M6 junction down in Stoke to the one outside LAX. With this one I planted lots and lots and lots of signposts, trees, you name it in the world, and did a heck of a load of liveries, cover art, and the various different bits of HUD that we needed. But this was kind of taking each step year by year is to develop towards a driving game, which we delivered in 2019 with Dangerous Driving. So because there's a lot of members of the burnout team that from Criterion, this was taking all of that sort of stuff and bringing it forward. So I ended up, again, planting many, many road signs, putting in many, many rocks in the world, building the HUD, having a great time, working from home. And then from 2019 to 2023, we decided to go even bigger. And this is the project that I'm currently still working on. I retired at the end of the year, but I've been kind of helping out until we ship this one. It's due to finish around the end of the year for shipping early next year. We have a gigantic island which has got hundreds of miles of road. You can go online in there and play with all the sort of destruction and everything, but the big kind of thing with this is it's all modifiable real time. So what you can do is you can make your own challenges, races and everything whilst you're still playing. You can build these gigantic looping insane tracks into the sky, share them and everything. And in fact, one of the, for the past sort of 2.5 years, we've been in a situation where you can be racing a loop-the-loop and other players can be building or deleting parts of the track whilst you're racing around on it. It's a really big, ambitious project, and where all the previous 3 fields were published, 3 fields only, we've actually teamed up with THQ Nordic to deliver this. But yeah, after 4.5 years of working on this one, and my finance guy going, I do realise you could have retired for the past 2 years, and I've got a backlog of hobbies and things and interests that I wanted to do. I was like, can I take another 18 months or 2 years? Jane's been retired for 2 years. Let's see what we're going to do. So decided that what I was going to do was make a change, and that was to then retire. So what I'm now doing is I'm focused on my health. I've done a load of stuff with, I'm massively into fitness. Sadly, some of the guys that I started the industry with never made it, and I'm really determined to make the most of the time I'm going. I've been doing some work with my GP on his podcast and everything, promoting health. Also, come on. This is going to skip, isn't it, if I press it once more? No. I do a load of artworks. I'm a local burlesque troupe. I do a load of life drawing. I've got kind of some street art sort of work that I'm doing. And in fact, actually, I have a display of this new stuff tomorrow on the booth when I've got a thing. I'm also been painting digitally tributes to my original games and stuff. And then about 7 years ago, I discovered costuming. On a whim, for my 50th birthday, we decided to go to Star Wars Celebration, and I thought, I'll have a go at building a Mandalorian armour. Since then, I've discovered the droid builders, I've discovered some wonderful costuming groups, and now, even next week, we're going to a hospital to raise money for children's cancer. It's been really rewarding. I get to be a stormtrooper that little me would be excited by, and I've actually started my own YouTube channel as I'm building robots and explaining how I do that. It's kind of this wonderful fusion of kind of video game programming and electronics, and then building real world things, and actually having spent so much time behind a screen for years, actually making something physical. Yeah, this is our lounge. The opportunity to learn all these techniques, from kind of leather work to vacuum forming to 3D printing, has been really, really cool. And yeah, I'm taking up more opportunities to talk to you wonderful people and telling my story of how I managed to survive. So yeah, and then that's what we're doing now. Jane and I have got the time, and we're doing our best to make the most of it, having had this incredible roller coaster of a journey all the way. So yeah, that's me. That's my story, and that's how I managed to survive this crazy roller coaster of 40 years of making games.